The information provided in this podcast is for general informational purposes only and does not constitute legal advice. Listening to this podcast does not create an attorney-client relationship with Foyle Legal. For advice tailored to your situation, please consult a qualified legal professional. Welcome to Personal Injury Claims Explained by Foyle Legal, your trusted source for understanding personal injury claims in Western Australia. Each week, we simplify complex legal issues, from motor vehicle accidents to workplace injuries, so you can confidently navigate your rights and claim the compensation you deserve.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're diving into something that feels ripped from the headlines. Hit and run accidents.
Yeah, it's a topic that's unfortunately very relevant, and understanding the nuances can make a world of difference.
Exactly, and we're zeroing in on Western Australia.
Right.
We've got legal documents and expert insights to guide us, specifically a guide to hit and run accident insurance claims in WA.
Okay.
So buckle up. This deep dive is about to get very real.
All right.
When you hear hit and run, you might picture like a serious crash.
Right.
But what actually makes it a hit and run legally in WA?
That's where it gets interesting.
Oh.
Western Australia, it's not just about the accident itself. It's about what you do after that determines if it's a hit and run.
Okay, let's unpack that. So say someone backs into your car in a parking lot and drives off.
Yeah.
Is that a hit and run?
In WA, it could be considered a hit and run.
Really?
The law in WA, specifically the Road Traffic Act of 1974, makes a clear distinction between your duties in an accident where someone is hurt versus just property damage, but you always have to stop.
Wow, so it's more than just driving away.
Right.
There are specific things you have to do by law.
Absolutely. And these obligations are really important because if you don't follow them, you could be facing criminal charges.
Wow.
It's not just about insurance anymore.
That's serious.
Yeah.
So walk us through those obligations.
Okay.
What exactly does the law say you have to do if you're in an accident?
Imagine this. There's been an accident. Someone is hurt. In WA, the law is crystal clear. You must stop immediately.
Right.
And not just for a second to assess the damage. You have to stay there long enough to make sure anyone injured gets help.
And it's not just a moral obligation, right? This is serious legal stuff.
Exactly. And you can't just speed off after checking on someone either.
Right.
If someone is hurt or the police ask, you have to give your name, address, and if you're not the owner of the vehicle, the owner's details as well.
So even if it wasn't your fault, you have to stay at the scene.
You have to stop.
Really?
Think about it this way. It's about taking responsibility for your actions even when it's difficult.
Right.
Plus, leaving the scene could make you look guilty later on, even if you weren't at fault.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So whether it's a serious crash with injuries at a parking lot, the law in Western Australia says you have to stop.
You have to stop.
Knowing this could save you a lot of trouble. But what happens next? We'll get into that right after this. All right, so we've laid the groundwork on what makes a hit and run in Western Australia. It's about more than just the accident itself.
Right.
But let's say the unthinkable happens and you're actually in this situation. Maybe you witnessed a hit and run or unfortunately were involved in the accident.
Yeah.
What should you do?
This is where having this knowledge can really make a difference because, let's be honest, in those moments after an accident, whether you're shaken up from being hit or worried about the implications, thinking clearly isn't always easy.
Absolutely. So first things first, what are the absolute must-dos if you're involved in a hit and run?
Well, regardless of which side of the situation you're on, your safety is paramount. If you can, move your vehicle out of traffic.
Right.
If there are injuries, call for help immediately.
And I know this might seem obvious, but it's worth repeating. Call the police and report the incident.
And this isn't just about filing a report for insurance, although that's important too. This is about creating an official record of what happened.
Right.
Our expert source even mentions a specific website for reporting accidents online in WA to make it easier.
So we've made sure everyone's safe and reported the incident to the police.
Right.
What about seeking medical attention?
Even if you think you're fine, get checked out by a doctor.
Okay.
Sometimes injuries don't show up right away, and having that medical record can be crucial, especially if you end up needing to make an insurance claim later on.
Which brings us to another critical aspect.
Yeah.
Your rights when it comes to insurance.
Right.
We know from our source that Western Australia has something called compulsory third-party insurance, right?
Yes, and this is where it gets really interesting, especially in hit and run situations.
Okay.
CTP insurance basically means that anyone injured in a motor vehicle accident in WA, even if they don't know who hit them, can still make a claim for compensation.
That's a relief.
Yeah.
But how does that work in practice? If you don't know who hit you, who do you even make the claim against?
That's where the Motor Vehicle Third Party Insurance Act of 1943 comes in.
Okay.
In cases where the other driver can't be identified, you actually make the claim against the Insurance Commission of Western Australia.
Interesting.
They act as what's called a nominal defendant.
So it's like the insurance commission steps in to fill the shoes of the missing driver.
Precisely. And our source, Christian Foyle, who's a top-rated personal injury lawyer in Perth specializing in these cases, points out two specific situations where this applies.
Okay.
When you can't figure out the identity of the vehicle, which is common in hit and runs,
Right.
and when the driver at fault can't be located.
That makes a lot of sense.
Right.
But this all hinges on actually reporting the accident.
Right.
What happens if someone chooses not to report a hit and run?
That's where things can get complicated.
Yeah.
According to our source, not reporting the incident, especially to the Insurance Commission of Western Australia, could seriously hurt your chances of getting compensation later on.
I can see how someone might be tempted to just drive away,
Right.
but you're saying that could be a huge mistake.
Exactly. Even if it seems minor, reporting it is crucial to protecting yourself legally and financially. You never know what might surface later on, like hidden damage or delayed injuries.
It's a powerful reminder that knowledge is power.
Right.
Speaking of which, let's talk about how insurance companies actually investigate these hit and runs.
Okay.
I imagine it's like solving a puzzle with half the pieces missing.
It can definitely be a challenge, especially when there's aren't many witnesses or much evidence, but our source gives us a glimpse into the methods they use to uncover the truth.
Okay.
It's a combination of old school detective work and modern technology.
Okay, so how do they actually solve these hit and run mysteries? What's going on behind the scenes?
Well, the Insurance Commission, acting as the CTP insurer in WA, might bring in investigators who interview anyone involved, including witnesses, to gather information.
So those seemingly insignificant details you jotted down after the accident could actually be crucial.
Absolutely. They'll also examine any available physical evidence from the scene, like tire marks, paint chips, or debris.
Okay.
And here's where it gets really interesting. They're increasingly using technology like traffic cameras, CCTV footage, even social media posts to piece together what happened.
Social media. Wow. I had no idea they used that.
It's becoming more common. People post about their day, their whereabouts, sometimes even accidents they've seen. It can be a goldmine of information for investigators.
That's incredible. It really shows you how much information is out there if you know where to look. So we've talked about the legal side, the importance of reporting, and even how these cases are investigated. Now, let's talk about something I'm sure is on everyone's mind, insurance premiums.
Right.
If you're involved in a hit and run, even if you're not at fault, does it affect your insurance?
That's a great question. While insurance policies can vary, generally, if you're the victim in a hit and run and you're not at fault, it shouldn't negatively impact your insurance.
That's a relief. So you're not penalized for being a victim of a crime.
Exactly. Insurance companies look at the circumstances, and in hit and run cases where you're the victim, it's usually clear you didn't do anything wrong. But it's always wise to check with your own insurance provider just to be sure.
Good advice. So we've covered a lot of ground here. What makes an accident a hit and run in WA? The legal obligations, what to do if you're involved, even how insurance investigations work. What are some key things people often get wrong about this?
You know, one big misconception is that if there's no damage or injury, you don't need to report it.
Right.
But we know that's not the case in WA. It protects you from any false claims later on.
And not reporting it, even for a seemingly minor incident, could backfire big time.
Absolutely. Another misconception is that hit and runs are a victimless crime. That's simply not true. Right.
Even if there are no physical injuries, there's an emotional toll and potentially a financial burden for those involved.
It really highlights that our actions have consequences, both for ourselves and others. Speaking of consequences, we've learned a lot from Christian Foyle's guide today. As a reminder, what makes his perspective so valuable?
Christian Foyle is a top-rated personal injury lawyer in Perth who specializes in motor vehicle accidents, including hit and runs.
Okay.
He deals with these cases day in and day out, so his insights are based on real-world experience and a deep understanding of the law.
So we're getting the inside scoop from someone who really knows their stuff. This deep dive has been eye-opening. We went from zero to well-informed on hit and runs in Western Australia. Any final thoughts for our listeners as they head back out into the world? I think the biggest takeaway is to be aware and prepared, understand your rights and responsibilities as a driver, know what to do in a hit and run situation, and even just be aware of how insurance investigations work.
Right.
Having this knowledge gives you confidence to handle these situations with less stress.
Knowledge is power, right? We've explored how Western Australia handles hit and runs, but it raises a bigger question. What do these laws say about how our society values personal accountability on the road? That's something to ponder. And remember, drive safely out there.
Thank you for listening to Personal Injury Claims Explained by Foyle Legal. We hope this episode helped clarify your rights and next steps in your injury claim. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and visit foylelegal.com for more useful information. See you next time.